for September 8th. I will call to order the Winooski City Council meeting. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance led by Deputy Mayor Hal Colston.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First up is agenda review. I believe we need to remove the executive session.
Yes, you can remove the executive session. We do not need it tonight.
Any concerns with that from council? Can I get a motion to remove the executive session from the agenda this evening?
So moved.
Motion by Hal, second by Jim, I think. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is public comment. I believe we have some folks signed up for public comment. Our communications coordinator will put folks through.
All right, so we have Arica Bronze. Arica, you are up first. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Yes, Arica.
Thank you. You can't see me, but you can hear me. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. That's good. No, just kidding. Okay, so I am commenting, or I guess I'm trying to follow up on a meeting that we had in our area on Manceau Street with some city officials, and Jesse was there, and it's concerning the parking congestion and the amount of traffic on Manceau Street, both from a parking perspective and also from a pedestrian and driving perspective. And so the points I'm particularly interested in learning more about where the city is at is with the changing the parking to the other side of the street, the sidewalk plan to put in the sidewalk, and just how to reduce speed on Manceau Street and in general. And lastly, what happens when our dead end blockade is removed. And one idea that I had is to create a one-way street on Manceau Street. So I guess I'm just asking for follow through. We haven't heard anything as a community that I know of yet from the city about that meeting.
Thanks, Erica. A couple of things. One, we do have on tonight's agenda a potential grant that would do a scoping study for sidewalks. So there's a couple streets without sidewalks. It's in our transportation master plan to address that. This grant would further that effort and sort of get us closer to a point of, how would we actually implement that? As far as the specific follow-up from the meeting, Jesse, I think you were going to speak to that in city updates, but.
Yeah, I'm going to do a full update on the meeting at City Updates.
Oh, okay. And where is that? I guess I could peek at the agenda to see. I think I might not be the only person on the public comment on this issue. So maybe it would be helpful for us to know. I'm sorry, I didn't know that was on the agenda.
It's Erica, it's not on the agenda. It's just every meeting I do a series of city updates. So I was going to provide an update on the Manceau follow-up at that agenda item. I'm happy to do it now with the blessing of the council, or hear from the other concerned resident and then keep it to city updates.
Let's hear our public comments, and then when you do your update, we can make sure we've addressed what we can. And FYI, that is 3 items away, probably 5-10 minutes away, depending on the public comment, how long that period lasts.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll hold tight.
Thanks, Laura. So next up, we have Terry Zickman. Terry, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I'm here tonight to ask some questions also about what's happening near Manceau Street. Particularly, I'm concerned about the sight lines for crossing there as a pedestrian. I have, I did email Jesse about this and finally heard back today about that. But I can't imagine how a pedestrian can safely cross the street over there. And as a member of Planning Commission, I spent many Thursday evenings working on the master plan where part of our goal, or supposedly the goal of the city, is to ensure a safe and efficient transportation system for all users. I don't see how that's a safe situation for pedestrians right now. And my concern is that it seems to come as an afterthought oftentimes to create a safe situation for pedestrians. And this is an example of that. Another example of that was last early winter when there was the condos were being developed on Mallett's Bay Avenue. There was no sidewalk provided. There is a sidewalk only on the west side of that street. And there was a development happening on the west side of the street. There was no sidewalk provided until I contacted the city and said, there's no sidewalk. And this is another example of that, where I just feel like it seems like it's an afterthought. And I'm here to ask the council and the mayor and the city, whoever's in charge in the city of this, to make sure from now on that it's not an afterthought, that it's something that's considered before any construction begins to happen. Where is that sidewalk going to be, and where are people going to be able to safely cross a street, especially a busy street like that?
Thank you, Terry. Jesse, or you want to roll that into your city update? Okay.
All right, thanks, Terry. So next up, we have Kate Coffey. Kate, I think this is you. I'm going to go ahead and hit allow to talk.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Kate. Yes.
Awesome. I'm also following up on the meeting and look forward to the updates that Jesse's going to provide. I do want to comment that we have been talking about this crossing in particular at Manso at some of these reviews for the project, and we continue to talk about it, and things don't seem to be moving. There is a crossing there, which is great. There's a real safety concern crossing that street without having the lights to indicate someone has started crossing to alert traffic because of the way the traffic is and the sight lines maybe, and just the general newness of that crossing. People will not stop unless you stick your foot out, and that's not safe. In addition, we also have been talking about making either the Spring Street, East Spring into East Allen, and the Dion Street entrance into East Allen safer by talking about bringing lights, traffic lights into those locations. I've been talking about it at planning, at review of these meetings, and again, it still isn't moving, and I don't think that it's in the best interest of the city to wait for an accident to happen. I urge you guys to take this on and get ahead of it before something bad happens. In addition, I want to follow up on something that I had emailed about and was told that we would discuss at the August 24th meeting, but I didn't really get an answer on this issue. And that is the study that the DeGest group did, which was used to reduce parking at the 355 Main Bellevue Street property. The methodology itself was flawed. And we can see, using the City Lofts property as an example where they aren't even utilizing the spaces that were provided is entirely inaccurate. I believe, the 40 or more folks that were at the meeting on the 24th would all tell you that there's not enough parking. The tenants don't think there's enough parking. The neighbors don't think there's enough parking. So I wonder about repealing that reduction based on facts. And I look forward to a response on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Paul, I think we have one more. Is that right?
Technically, there's one more person signed up, but John Ames, but I'm not seeing John Ames here in the attendee list, so I believe we can move on.
Okay. So next up is our consent agenda. Then we have,
Do you just want to remind people, because there are a number of people in the attendees list, that if they are interested in speaking, they can raise their hand or use the chat box.
That's right. And if you're on phone, you can press *9. Thank you for that, Jesse. So next up is consent agenda. After that will be council reports, and then we'll have city update where we can hear more about the follow-up on that resident meeting regarding Manso. So on our our consent agenda, we have our city council minutes from our August 18th meeting and an accounts payable warrant ending 9/3/2020, payroll warrant for period 8/9 to 8/22/2020. Any questions or concerns about the consent agenda? Questions or concerns from the public? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Did Mike drop off? Am I not seeing him now?
Looks that way.
Okay. Oh, he sent me a message. He is addressing his Wi-Fi. Let's move to council reports then and start with Amy.
Sure. So I attended the downtown Winooski board meeting a few weeks back, and I think I had shared previously that group is in the process of bringing on new board members, particularly people with business owners or some sort of business background to better serve their new mission. And at the last meeting, they welcomed 3 new board members. So former Mayor Seth Leonard, Laura Wade of Misery Loves Company, and George Bergen of Beverage Warehouse. And for the next few weeks, they will be opening up the recruitment process for more people who are interested. So if folks want to learn more about that, they can visit downtownwinooski.org. And additionally, the Safe, Healthy, Connected People Commission was supposed to be tonight, but due to the scheduling conflict with this meeting, it's been moved to next Tuesday at 6:30.
Thanks, Amy. Hal?
I have no report at this time.
Thank you. Jim?
So I was able to attend the Safe, Healthy, Connected People Commission meeting last month, and primarily served as kind of a reconvening of the group and updates from departments. There was some discussion around some traffic needs along Cedar Street, and just to kind of report on some of the odors that have been reported to the city for to be addressed. But in general, I think it was a nice opportunity for the group to get back together. They did have a presentation at the prior month's meeting, but hadn't really reconvened as a commission since then. So that was great, and nice to have an opportunity to attend a different commission. The Housing Commission met and spent the bulk of the time discussing the housing indicators data, which is part of our agenda later. So I won't comment on that at this time, except to say I'm glad that they're looking at it. And they also are approved their work plan, which will focus largely on beginning to implement the Housing Trust Fund recommendations through reviewing applications once the MOU is finalized. So they'll start receiving applications and reviewing those over the next year, and that'll be a part of their work plan going forward, as well as evaluating the other policy needs related to housing security in the city. And finally, on the note for trees, I pitched a project to a UVM senior capstone group to develop a planting prioritization map for the city, and it looks like there might be some interest. UVM seniors in the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources have to do a community service project at the end of their degree, and this is a great opportunity, especially in the COVID world, to harness a lot of brain power for free. And they're looking for projects like this where people can do a lot of desk work and some outside surveys. So I think we might get a pretty strong group of students this time around to work on this project, which would be awesome. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Jim. Mike, I see you're back on. Do you have any council reports to share?
I would like just to say welcome back to school, kids, and hopefully all the parents are not too overjoyed that their kids are back to school. And I'm having some internet issues today with my modem, so I apologize if I keep going in and out. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. Just a couple small things from me. I don't know if you recall that for the last 2 months, I've been hosting an informal Zoom call on Thursdays just for members of the public to attend. The last one was last week, not very well attended at all. So something we can discuss in the future if we want to try some other different outreach efforts. I attended an event down on Church Street last week celebrating the 100-year anniversary of women's suffrage. This was recorded and aired on Channel 17 and was an opportunity for me to share about the charter change to try to spread the word on that. And also had a Working Communities Challenge grant call, but we'll be talking about that on the agenda. So I will save that information. And with that, I can hand it over to our city manager for the city update.
Great, thanks. I do have quite a bit today, so bear with me. I'm going to rearrange my order a little bit and start with Manso Street since we have interest in that on the call tonight. And I'm happy if it makes sense to the council, I'm happy to put this into an official community update to share broadly on Front Porch Forum and with the neighbors as well following this meeting or tomorrow. So generally speaking, I want to start this update in the context of parking, traffic calming, and pedestrian safety generally in the city. I think obviously individual points in the city are very important, but our role as a council and leadership team is really to think about the policy and high level goals of the city. So parking and traffic calming and pedestrian safety, as Terry alluded to earlier, have been the focus of staff and community work for many years. We've undertaken a number of planning efforts and activities to fine tune how we handle parking, traffic calming, and pedestrian safety. So we had our form-based code process that talked about pedestrian and transportation orientation a lot. We issued a parking study in 2017 that focused downtown. In 2017, we did a transportation master plan that talked about pedestrian and bike routes throughout the city strategically and in a comprehensive way. During the 2018-2019 Main Street planning, obviously pedestrian orientation and bike orientation is a big part of that plan, and we'll be talking about that later in the evening tonight. Last year, as you all know, we completed the East Allen scoping study, which is looking primarily at the location directly below Manso Street, Hood's Crossing, or where East Allen enters, or where East Spring enters into East Allen. And you all selected the preferred alternative of signalizing that intersection, which will, in the long run, improve traffic speeds and flow in that area greatly. As I think you know, John has talked with you about recently, that paving of East Allen is on the VTrans work plan for the upcoming years, and we are working with them to hopefully signalize that intersection at the same time. As you know, we now have a CCRPC supported, Regional Planning Commission supported parking study underway citywide to look at how the development in our gateways will impact parking comprehensively in the city. With our 2020 recovery plan, you approved a policy or a priority of implementing a citywide traffic calming policy. And I just want to call out that there's a really good summary of all of these efforts in a memo Eric Vorwald prepared for the Planning Commission this week. So if you're interested in kind of that inventory of past studies, that's linked off of that Planning Commission agenda. So all of these public processes have repeatedly resulted in city goals around maximizing the development potential of the gateway districts while focusing on improving pedestrian and bike transportation and infrastructure, and efficiently making use of the public and private parking for the community. So not overbuilding parking, but certainly building the amount of parking that is needed to support the land use. So as you've heard from Erica and Kate and Terry today, on August 24th, 5 of the city leadership team, myself, Chief Audie, Lieutenant Charkalis, John Rauscher, and Eric Vorwald met with about 40 or 50 residents on Manceau Street, all masked up, which was very impressive. And many concerns were shared, as you've again heard tonight and in previous public comments. And many great ideas were shared about short and long-term solutions. So I wanted to go through those tonight and what we're immediately working on, and I'll address specifically what the commenters mentioned earlier. So new ideas that were discussed were striping the parking along Manceau Street. So striping out the parking spots so people were as efficiently parking along Manceau Street as possible to ensure that all the parking was available. Public Works will be doing that striping next week. As the mayor mentioned earlier tonight, they also talked about a sidewalk, a permanent sidewalk on Manceau Street, which we fully support, is in the Transportation Master Plan. And tonight we're bringing you a grant application to apply for the next phase of that sidewalk planning. Ongoing, and as Erica mentioned, the road is currently closed, which changes the traffic pattern significantly. As that reopens in the fall, observing what is going on there and ensuring that we are supporting not only good traffic flow, but safety will be important to us. It's hard to know that right now with the street closed. We also discussed changing, as you heard earlier, the parking from what the current side, so right now there's one side of the street parking on Manceau, changing it to the other side. We heard honestly pretty conflicting perspectives on that, which side of the street the parking should be on. So more public process needs to happen about that. And then we also discussed changing the zoning in the future, how the community goes about doing that if that is of interest to folks. And then, of course, our long-term plan of signalizing that East Allen intersection, which I do think will help the speeds and the traffic flow and the sight lines and the pedestrian crossings in the area in general. I think those are all the active steps. We also do, as staff, want to acknowledge that there are several examples of gateway development that have happened over the past couple of years that have not resulted in parking challenges in the communities, that were built to the parking standards, as these buildings also have been built to the parking standards. Examples of that are City Lights and Cassavant Overlook, which is right across the street. I don't say that to minimize the concerns of the residents. I think that one of the significant challenges right now is that neighborhood is at the worst peak of construction and disruption, with the road closed, with a huge project going on at 223 East Allen. There's a lot of disruption happening in that neighborhood, and really want to acknowledge and recognize that, but also plan for when that is not the case and what it looks like on the other end of that construction phase. Finally, we just wanted to thank so many residents, all the residents, for coming out on the 24th and being respectful and asking good questions and bringing ideas forward. It's certainly, we will all do better as a result of more minds at the table. So that is the update I wanted to provide. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to turn that into a more formal update that we send around to the community.
I was just gonna say thank you for that very comprehensive update, and I do think it would be a good idea to formalize that.
So moving on to other city updates. So first I want to share that Heather Carrington, who is on a very well-deserved vacation this week, represented the Winooski Housing Commission as a panelist on a fair housing project webinar called Housing Committees as a Tool to Meet Local Housing Needs in August. It was very well attended, about 80 registrants across the state, sponsored by CVEOEO, Vermont Housing Finance Agency, and DHCD. If you would like to see a webinar of that recording, it's available at housingdata.org. So really highlights the success of the Winooski Housing Commission, which is great. We want to share with you that we will be starting the middle of next week our paving efforts for the season. As you know, with the competitive bidding nature, that was slightly delayed this year. So we will be paving Maple Street, Union Street, East Street, and Pine Street below Mallets Bay Avenue. And we will be sending out door hangers to all of the residents this week, putting up temporary no parking signs, and of course, putting it out through all of our media channels. So heads up that will likely get started before our next council meeting. I heard a concern from a counselor about skateboarding at the new pool. Young people breaking into the new beautiful pool and skateboarding. So did some research on that I want to share with the full council tonight. So since August 3rd, we've had 22 directed patrols to the new pool. The officers are expected on each shift each dark shift to drive by the pool and spotlight it to make sure there is nobody in there. We've received one 911 call reporting intruders. That was on August 3rd at, 509? Is that right, Chief? 709. And we responded by 7:15. There was no one there by the time we got there. We think that the neighbors did some collective action and got folks out of the pool. That was also the day before the fence was installed. So there was much easier access at that point. Since the fence has been installed, we've not seen any intruders at the pool. Additionally, because the pool will remain filled over the winter, we are less concerned about its use as a skate park. Additionally, Ray has reached out to the skating community and just requested that they help do some positive peer pressure to eliminate that potential. And there are, just so you know, there are also motion detector lights in the pool. So if somebody is in there, they will come on. They're very bright, and hopefully the police or the neighbors will be informed. Wanted to share a few upcoming meetings. Some of these have been mentioned. Planning Commission is meeting this coming Thursday. The Development Review Board will meet next Thursday. They will be hearing the appeal of the notice of violation that the zoning administrator issued for 133 Elm Street related to the odors in the CBD operation. So again, that's next Thursday at the DRB meeting. They will be hearing the appeal of the zoning administrator's notice of violation for 133 Elm. And then we also have a Finance Commission meeting next Tuesday. Finally, bear with me, last update. I wanted to share an update on the school resource officer position. So several of you have been following this, so forgive the repetition. In July and August, the school trustees had several conversations with the Winooski students for anti-racism about demands that were being made by the students and alumni aimed at helping the school district begin its journey towards being an anti-racist institution. One of those demands included the school resource officer and recommending changes and future elimination of that position. The chief of police, the current SRO, Jason Zeiter, and myself have had several conversations with the superintendent, and students and the school trustee chair over the last couple of weeks about this change and what this year would look like, which would be different from last year to meet the demands, and then what community process we would implement to plan for next year. Last Monday, the chief, the superintendent, the school trustee chair, and student representatives from Wausau met. We had a great conversation about their demands and how we could work together to plan for the future. We really felt very positive about how we were moving out of that conversation and the changes we were making. We had planned for the SRO to change the uniform, to soften it a bit, to use an unmarked vehicle, to not park in front of the school, to change how incidents were reported in a more transparent way. And the students seemed amenable to that. However, we were going to require that as a Winooski police officer, the SRO remained armed, carried a weapon on his person, which was different from what the demand required. So we believed we had come out of that meeting with some good shared understanding and a process moving forward. On this past Sunday evening, the school trustees called an emergency meeting to reaffirm the commitment to the students' demands. They voted to reaffirm that commitment as it currently stood. As a result, the SRO as a Winooski police officer cannot be in the school building this school year. So as of today, Jason did not report for duty to the school district. I met with him this morning with the chief. This all happened Sunday night and Monday during the day. We will absolutely respond to the school if there is a 911 request or an official request made, but he will not be stationed at the school this year. It is unclear how the school trustees plan to move forward with a community process in September and October, but we have indicated that if they would like to do that, we certainly will participate. This represents quite a significant shift in how we manage public safety in our community, especially public safety for children who have experienced interactions with the police department through family involvement or other things. And we're currently assessing that impact and how we might shift this position this year and into the future to best support the public safety of our youngest residents. Currently, the school trustees have indicated that they will honor the financial commitment in FY21 to fund that position. So we plan to keep the officers either employed and redeployed in a new way, but that may change as the process goes forward in the next weeks and months to come. So I wanted to make sure you all had that update, and that is it. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Jesse. A lot going on right now. Moving on to our regular items. The first item is for approval. This is a Shop Small proclamation. So every year we do the Small Business Saturday proclamation as a promotion for shopping small around the holidays. The same organization is putting out another statement urging folks to do so now in light of the economic impacts of the pandemic on our small business community. Additionally, today, the state of Vermont opened a program offering residents up to $30 in gift card money to shop at local businesses. Our downtown Winooski Association has been providing information, encouraging our local businesses to get registered on here so that, you know, as Winooski residents, we have access to get some of this free money to help spend in our local community. So I put this on the agenda today as a way to help publicize that effort and encourage folks to continue shopping locally as there's still an ongoing economic impact here. Are there any questions or concerns about this proclamation? Any questions from the public? As a reminder, use the raise hand feature in the chat or press *9 if you're on phone, if you wish to speak. I see Kate.
We took some video of the meeting the other day, and I think that, I mean, I'm happy to go back and look at it, but I think there was a greater number of folks who wanted to switch the parking from one side to the other on Manso than did not. Clearly, there was not everyone in agreement. I actually am wondering about trying to get the answer to that question. Are we or are we not going to switch prior to painting the stripes? I'm wondering if there's a way to move that forward. Again, I'm happy to look at the video. And I think I posted it on Front Porch Forum, so anyone can look at it. Thank you.
So, Kate, procedurally, this is not a warrant item on the agenda, so we can't be making a decision about it in this council meeting because the public isn't aware that it's something we're discussing. Staff can follow up with you later this week.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Was there any public comment on this Shop Small proclamation? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Our next item is Assessor's Office errors and omissions. Is our guest present?
I don't see Ted on the call. He's our city assessor. Ted, if you are on the call under another name, there are a few names on here that aren't familiar. If you could raise your hand, like on the call on the participants feature. I don't think he's here, so this can be tabled to a future meeting.
Okay. Moving on to item C, Treasurer's FY20 year-end report. And Alex is here.
Oh, there we go. It wasn't working a minute ago. Yeah, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm pleased to present the fourth quarter Treasurer's financial report for fiscal year 2020. I always try to kind of validate the deficits and surpluses that you'll see throughout each fund. Sometimes there's going to be swings both ways, particularly with COVID-19. Overall, we had a net surplus of $120,000 across all funds, but it's important to note that certain loan payments were delayed, certain investments pushed back. So it's sort of, you got to dig underneath every single quarter to make sure that the numbers, you don't just take them for what they look like initially. Things that I thought were important to note is that property taxes pertaining to a general fund actually met their target as final collections were made in July and August. We actually met the target, so that's tremendous. Other areas of strength or weaknesses were kind of consistent through the last 2 months of the year. That's a good sign of stability. We didn't see any drastic changes or things that we haven't already addressed prior, as well as changes that we did see were out of sort of Winooski's control. So we had certain grants that were canceled, or in some cases, loan payments that we had deferred to July. They've already been made, so there's no future liquidity concerns there. But for the budget-wise, that was done to kind of meet budget. Despite a global pandemic, Winooski has still managed to successfully meet sort of the financial parameters that were set almost 2 years ago. I think that's very impressive. Obviously, things can swing drastically as we come into the winter, but so far things are still stable. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If I don't have them now, I can certainly research.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions from council? Any questions from members of the public?
Christine?
Yes.
So just adding one more sentence to Alex's point about the surplus, I do certainly financial decisions were changed as a result of the pandemic that led to the surplus. One of those being the decision to furlough staff. So I just want to acknowledge the hardship many staff faced to help get to that surplus as well.
Yeah, and I think as was mentioned, we don't know how things are going to continue into the next fiscal year. Surplus could be handy, might not remain a surplus. And we do have some deficits in some of our enterprise funds as well. But we'll be talking about next year's budget very soon. Jim, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'm leading off of that. In particular, the parking funds were concerned, and I haven't seen much discussion on any sort of relief for that type of shortfall in government. I'm just curious if staff are aware of any impending action or potential action or pie in the sky ideas for making up those types of deficits where we have an enterprise that really has no way to recover through some other backfilling.
I'll jump in here, but Angela, feel free to add to it. I have not seen any elected official want to fund lost parking revenue. I don't think that's going to be a hot item for a grant application. You have several other grant applications you'll see on your agenda later on today about COVID relief. I think while there is while we did run a deficit in that fund, we do have a significant fund balance in that fund. So while we really hope this state of revenue collection and parking does not maintain, I do think we are well positioned to kind of weather that storm, assuming the storm doesn't last too long. Angela, any you want to add to that?
No, not for the parking fund. We aren't seeing any real reimbursements for lost revenues with the exception of childcare. That is the only place where we've seen any sort of grants or assistance for lost funds. We did end some of our funds in a deficit primarily due to timing issues with debt. So our wastewater fund ended with a deficit due to some construction on Hickok Street, where we are still waiting to sign off on the debt agreements, and we will be reimbursed for those costs when that comes in. And for the debt payment in the TIF district, we actually made an advance payment, which is why we only had a single debt payment in FY20. We made a balloon payment to the P Corps in May of 2019. So we only ended up with a single debt payment, which good for cash flow for us for FY20, but we did not make an extra payment to them in July. And we did end in a deficit for the Community Justice Center. Because that grant ended, we did have to return any unexpended grant funds, some of which had carried forward from the prior fiscal year, so automatically had to run a deficit. So some of those things were going to happen regardless of budget management.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, so this is on for approval. I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hal, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Next up is on for discussion item D, the Working Communities Challenge Grant Proposal, which Jesse will introduce.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Hal, I just saw your hand was raised.
Yes. In the interest of avoiding conflict of interest, I probably should hop off, zoom out, and maybe you can text me, Mayor Locke, when you're finished your discussion. I didn't open the document, but I serve on the steering committee and I'm on the jury for the selection of the 4 finalists. So I should probably not listen.
Yes, I will show you a text when we move to our next item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hal.
Thank you, Hal. Okay, I'm going to kick off this discussion, but Phoebe and Christine and Jim, who've all been a part of these conversations, and Angela, from a budgetary perspective, feel free to jump in. So as you know, we currently have a Working Communities Challenge Grant planning grant. So we got $20,000 to do this planning effort this year. We are well into that process and really at the tail end. So the steering committee has listened to a lot of feedback outlined here, had many conversations, participated in a lot of the Working Communities Challenge Grant technical assistance sessions. and has really solidified the goals around ensuring that all voices are heard and engaged in policy decisions at the city level, expanding community liaison roles, and hiring an equity director for the city. So those are the high level goals that the steering committee has established for us. With those goals, staff has now, both city staff and school staff have worked to put together a high level work plan and budget for implementing those goals. And that is what is before you today. Today, we are looking for your feedback on this proposal, since this will be a change to municipal functioning moving forward. And with that feedback, we will take that back to the steering committee. The steering committee will finalize the implementation proposal. Then we will bring it back to you for official approval on the 21st. So this is kind of a step in our outreach process. I'm not going to read through this, but on page 2 of this memo is a high-level work plan for years 1 and 2, which we have discussed with our steering committee members, city staff, councilors and the mayor, ALV, USCRI, the school district, and Winooski Housing Authority. We've also included a proposed budget for you. One of the things that staff immediately recognized as we started building this out is that while $100,000, if we were to receive $100,000 from the Working Communities Challenge Grant, implementation grant, that's a lot of money for us as a community. However, it is not enough money to achieve the goals that we have set out. So we decided to present you with a 5-year budget and several different revenue streams to present a model on how we could fully achieve these goals over the grant years, including new grants, specifically working with the Vermont Community Foundation to try and get some additional money to support the equity director, how that will look over the 5 years leading to fully rolled into the general fund to at a rate of almost 200,000 in the year the TIF expires. So not necessarily new tax dollars, but a future commitment of TIF dollars. I also outline in that document the assumptions made going into that budget. And then finally, we have included for you in your packet tonight a job description for what the equity director would be responsible for in the city. And many thanks to Phoebe for researching this, talking with other equity directors in the area, participating in the planning conversations, and really identifying what we thought we needed in this position. So I will leave it there. Anything significant, Phoebe or Christine or Jim, I missed in that summary? Happy to answer any questions any counselors have about this or just receive feedback.
Jesse and steering committee, I would just say that I really appreciated you all building in that budget beyond the life of the grant. I think oftentimes that can get overlooked, and with something as important as the equity work, it would be a real shame for the community to just have this for a few short years and then struggle to find a way to fund it. So I really appreciated that forward thinking on your part. I did have one question about the salary for the equity director as proposed from year 1 to year 2. It looked like it was about 30,000 in year 1 and then went up to 100 and something in year 2. Is that just timing of when we anticipate being able to bring someone on?
Both timing of good question. Both timing of bringing somebody on and how the revenue years go for this grant. So this grant will be a calendar year grant, not a fiscal year grant, which gets a little confusing for us. So we will know by January whether we are awarded the grant. Assuming we are, then we would immediately start hiring. But this assumes only 4 months of that position in FY21 and then fully funded in FY22, 23, 24, 25.
Thank you.
So as a steering committee participant, I just want to share that there's a lot of things we could do and a lot of things we have discussed through these meetings and trying to figure out what it is. Like what are we putting into this grant application and where are we going to focus our resources? I think what's presented here gets at that discussion. I also think that it's, what's the word I want? Aspirational. We are relying on we're looking for additional funding, right? Grant funding now. And we end this in 3 years with about $200,000 of new expenses. Something the Finance Commission will be looking at, and I think hopefully, I'll talk to you about this later, Jesse, but would like to bring to a council meeting is really starting to look at what it is that we are forward committed to. We'll see later tonight that we are looking at using almost 50% of the TIF funds for the Main Street project. If that is also where this funding came from, that's upwards of 20%. And so making sure that we understand what we are committing ourselves to. So I just want to be prepared if we don't receive all of these, like what is in here is good, but if we don't receive all of these other grant funding right now, we may need to sort of peel out some things or slow down on the approach. But I do think this encompasses a lot of what we would hope to do. Mike, I see your hand raised.
I have a question on spending the TIF money right now. So can you back up, Mayor, and can I just ask you 50% of the TIF money will be going into the Main Street project, and then you said 20% into this equity?
So that's not exactly accurate. We're modeling Main Street with the assumption that 50% of our TIF revenue will go towards that project.
Okay.
We're not really modeling a source for this, but if we are committing ourselves to, in 3 years, $200,000 in extra expenses, that's 4-cent tax raise, or we pull it from TIF or some other source.
Okay, because that's what I'm getting at. I know we've had past conversations with residents of Winooski, knowing that when that TIF ended, it would try to help not keep the tax rate either steady or even lower the tax money by using some of that money, so we wouldn't be raising taxes in Winooski. Am I off bases on this? Am I hearing this right, that we're going to start using this TIF money now and not stay with the promises of keeping the taxes down for Winooski residents?
So, philosophically speaking, putting it towards these projects does stabilize the tax rate, right? Because we use that money instead of increasing taxes for these new expenses. But it is a decision that we need to be thinking about as we progress with each of these projects.
Okay. No, I agree with that. I just know that some people are they're waiting for the day where all this business that has exploded in Winooski over the last 20 years, it starts paying off for this residents. And I'm afraid if we start using future programs and using that TIF money, that payoff for the residents that have been sticking around, they're not going to get the reward, right? So to speak.
Angela, I feel like you have something to say.
I did want to add that while a majority of the revenues in the TIF district are property taxes, there are other sources of revenue in the TIF district that are separate and apart from the tax rate. 65% of the TIF district is from property taxes, the municipal government in FY25.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's also additional growth in the city, right? Like we see some grand list growth every year. Who knows what will happen with local options taxes over time. But I just want us to be thinking about, there are many, many needs in Winooski. We heard earlier today about pedestrian and safety issues. There's an East Allen project. There are sidewalks missing from streets, right? Like there are many needs in our city that we're going to have to plan for. We're not going to be able to do them all at once, and just keeping that big picture in mind.
Correct.
So the point that I was trying to make is I think it's worth pursuing this in the grant application, but just understanding that if we don't receive all of this funding, we may need to revisit exactly what we're attempting to do here. Which luckily, from the sounds of it, this grant is somewhat more flexible than normal and has room to adjust if we have a good cause.
Absolutely. Just adding another sense that I think very much unlike other grants, they specifically don't ask you to apply, submit multi-year grants or multi-year work plans, knowing that that will change, that things could change over the years of this grant. So we do have that flexibility, as the mayor mentions.
Jim?
So I want to support the idea of putting this in a larger context of like putting our TIF expenditure promises and thinking about what portions of our community we need to invest in or pay back. I think there's plenty of other good sources or destinations for TIF funds. We can talk about the Housing Trust Fund, or we could talk about infrastructure. We could talk about gray and green infrastructure. And then social programs, supporting childcare options in the city is another aspect where we don't get that direct benefit out of the economic development along the gateways and then the downtown core, but we could be providing those services back. So I think I would love to see us have that conversation about how much goes into infrastructure, how much goes into buying down tax, how much goes into supporting community services that aren't directly benefiting from economic development. So I think that is I think that's needed not just for this, but for many other discussions we're going to have. So I'm glad to hear that we might do that. And I want to, I've been on a lot of these calls, and I think the equity director piece is something that has emerged as a capacity issue. And I think that it's worth it to be thinking big about this position right now, especially, but in general, to make all the other changes that we envision, having someone with the time and capacity and skills to do that right the first time, and not try and do it on a shoestring and fail. Because I think one of the things that I heard in both the Equity Council discussion and in the homeschool liaison expansion discussion is, if this is done poorly, it might actually do more harm than good. And so while I think we could end up looking at a situation where we need to hire someone, pay them appropriately, and then 3 years later realize we just cannot support that from Winooski taxpayers or the TIF, and we have to pull back, at least we've done it right for those 3 years and given it a chance to succeed. So I think there is a fair bit of, there's a risk of future obligation, but I think the need to do it right is important. I think I want to just applaud the city for putting forward a proposal, and the steering committee for putting forward a proposal that actually, I think, appropriately resources the work we want to do.
Well, and I think, like, looking at this job description, that this also frees up some other staff capacity. Some of this coordinating with partner organizations is stuff our community services director is currently doing. I think there's a piece in here around data that might be something that we are frequently asking Heather to do off, sort of one-off. So there is some beyond like this person having the capacity to do it. I think it also adds a little capacity to existing positions. Because we didn't read through this and folks may not have viewed the agenda, I will just say this is an extension of a discussion we've been having for a while about how to bring more voices to the table, to the decision-making process in Winooski, make sure we're hearing them. Some work we started 2 years ago in conjunction with the school that resulted in recommendations to expand the role of the schools community liaisons to also support city efforts, and an equity counselor commission. There's some additional information, some additional pieces in here around, what is this referred to as? Winooski Community Academy. So something that we have heard from, I would say across demographics in our city, is just wanting to understand better how local government functions, what a resident's role is, what they should expect from the city. And so that's another piece that's in here, trying to educate folks on how they can be involved. Is there any additional feedback that you are looking for?
Not that I'm looking for. I think this conversation was helpful. We just wanted to make sure we were checking in with you and going on down the right track more or less before we did a lot more grant writing, but we will bring it back to you for final approval next meeting. Thank you very much.
All right, so moving on to item E, Main Street Revitalization Project update.
Did you want to have Hal come back in?
Thank you so much for reminding me, John.
Yep.
Jeez. Also, Paul, is there a way to make John a host so he can share his screen? There you go.
None.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Welcome back, Al.
Thank you.
Oh, did you see Jim's chat, Jesse? Is Ted on now?
I just sent that to you, Christine.
Oh, it looks like Ted is here. Do we want to jump back to item B?
I would recommend that we just move forward, given other folks on the phone, and we can do that at a future meeting.
Okay.
You have until December to approve those.
Okay. John, take it away.
Great, thanks everyone. Good evening. So this is our roughly quarterly check-in on the Main Street Revitalization Project. Our last update was June 15th, I believe. And we also have VHB available on the line to answer any questions. And they'll be presenting some of the streetscape design enhancements. So general outline, the first two items are more of a refresher. And then the remaining items are what we've been up to since June and what the next steps are. So again, high level goals. These are the goals that were outlined all the way back in April 2018 during the community board, the community dinner event for the bond vote. So as shown, it's, following the community vision, modernizing our 100-year-old infrastructure and providing multimodal enhancements, placemaking. So we're looking to create a more vibrant corridor and, building to support new development. So really making the corridor match what the form-based code guidelines have dictated for us. And then this, again, is just sort of a general broad overview for folks that may not be as familiar with the project. So it's probably hard to read, but status to date, this really all started back in 2014 with the Main Street Corridor Plan, which quickly followed by the Gateway Form-Based Code in 2015. And then, some milestones to present. I'm not going to read through all these, but interesting side note. So the photo there is from January 2018 when we went through the process of the corridor alternatives, where we, met with the Planning Commission and the Infrastructure Commission to really carve up the corridor for, who's going to be using, how many linear feet of the corridor for pedestrian or bikes or cars. So you can see some recognizable folks. That was actually my first meeting in Winooski, and I wasn't even I wasn't an employee yet, so that was my first introduction. So good times. So general project updates. So this is since the June meeting, the two big takeaways that we wanted to highlight. One is that the schedule, the pre-construction schedule has extended from what we presented back in March. So I believe this meeting was actually going to be a 90% document review meeting. We're still kind of at the tail end of 60% design phase. So we, the main reason for that, and we'll get into more details when we do a schedule highlight, but the main reason for that is, we've been providing a lot of additional feedback to the design team for revising documents, which, has partially led to the second item I'll get to. And we've been having some issues getting feedback from agencies. We believe that's mainly due to COVID, just staffing requirements. So, right now our plan, the plan is we're, just waiting on some feedback from DEC, and that will basically close out the 60% phase, and then we'll be moving into 90%. Again, I'll get into more of the schedule stuff later when we get to that slide and show you how that kind of impacts the overall schedule. The other highlight since June is that, we have the design team has performed a revised cost estimate. The total construction cost is right now estimating at $15.7 million. So that's roughly $1.7 million less than the preliminary estimate is 17.4. Again, I'll get into more details of, what's that reduction from when we get later in the slide. And then, in the memorandum, you can read, the other progress items since June. So we have been pretty busy moving the project forward. So I won't bore you to read all that, but it is in the memorandum. And if you're really interested, we do have the PDFs of the current design plans up on the city webpage. It's under that current initiatives heading right on the city webpage. So feel free to go through those. So project schedule. So getting into more detail with where we're at. So right now with the extension of the pre-construction schedule, we've highlighted these milestones where we think, basically how the project's going to lay out until construction. And really what we ended up doing is, given the status of where the project was, we internally laid out, we did a whole Gantt chart construction schedule of each of the tasks remaining, and, trying to be realistic with what's going on, with COVID delays and how long that's going to take us. So these are really just milestones pulled out from the construction schedule that's in your packet. So right now we're looking at, this winter, January, to complete those 90% documents. Right away, which I'll probably have VHB describe this later in the presentation, but the right-of-way process is basically where we procure all the temporary and permanent easements in order for the construction to start, and actually in order for us to bid the project. So those are things like the electrical transformers that are going to sit on private property. We have to get an easement for those from that landowner. That could be a lengthy process. So right now we're targeting March 2021 to complete that work. And that's actually starting this month. The first initial right-of-way work is happening now. And then we'd get into construction documents in April in the spring with, potential construction award and, a start date with with bid approval from the council in June. So we, all in all, we are still looking to start construction next season, with council approval, obviously, but it is delayed given where we're at right now. Along those lines, we did revise the sort of quarterly council check-in to match the new schedule. So those are the items below. So those are, we'd be looking at December, January for you all to review the 90% documents. Granted, there's not going to be a lot of changes from the current 60% drawings that are posted now. Mainly it would be, some detail refinement, the right-of-way drawings. So it wouldn't change drastically from what you're seeing in those PDFs. And then March and April is when we'd be coming to you for, the bid scope items. So this is the project, council, this is the project we're looking to bid. What feedback do you have for us on that? And then in June, potentially coming to you in the ward. So that's the current project schedule right now. I guess since that is a big change, I'll stop there if there's any questions. Great, keep going. So before we get into sort of the design updates since the last meeting, these are mainly the two feedback items we'd be looking for tonight. And this really stems from the Municipal Infrastructure Commission. So we did get some recommendations from them on two design elements for the current 60% documents. One is streetlight fixture style. And it's really an aesthetics issue. So you could say, John, I don't care about that. Just send it back to the commission. But I did want to bring it to your attention because it is a bit different than what the downtown streetlights currently look like. So it would be different than what we've been saying about, pulling the downtown streetscape up the corridor. So, and it's a pretty large cost item. So I believe it's, somewhere around $490,000 for all the streetlights on the corridor. So bring it to your attention if you do have any feedback. And then the other item, which is really there is a cost associated with this, but there's a lot of benefits as well, is extending the Silva-Cell tree pit systems all the way up the corridor. So that I believe you're all pretty familiar with. I think we've talked about that a few times, but these systems are a modular system that go underneath the proposed street trees. And it's really meant to provide them a better ecosystem and allow them to grow and thrive. It also provides some stormwater benefits, but it comes at a cost as well. So previously the city staff had requested that that system be dedicated for south of East Spring Street because there was not going to be any undergrounding duct bank there. So it seemed like it better coordinated with the underground utilities, where north of Spring Street, we were going to have underground duct banks below those tree pit systems. Upon further review and talking with the landscape architect who will be coming up next, those systems are pretty modular. You can basically pull them out, excavate, move the bricks, pull them out, and get to underground infrastructure if need be. So I think with that, technically we're comfortable with moving it up the corridor, but it becomes a question on how the council wants to proceed. So I see Mike's hands up. I'll stop there and let Mike go ahead.
John, I also think that tree pit system saves on maintenance of sidewalks in future infrastructure too, by having the roots grow in that system instead of upheaving the sidewalks. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, and I think right now is a good time. if Mike Willard is, I can't see, but if Mike Willard's available from VHB, the landscape architect for the project. Yep, see him there. Mike, could you go through the next couple slides on the streetscape? And
sure, happy to.
Okay, great.
So this plan is showing basically kind of the two ideas of how we're treating the streetscape design. So the graphic that you see on the left, so that's East Spring Street to a fountain. So that's based on your form-based code, that's kind of your storefront zone. So that was seen as kind of like the higher end, if you will, area where you've got commercial businesses on the ground floor, and it's really kind of like the heart and soul of Main Street for your commercial operations and the small businesses that would be there. And so the idea here is that you've got brick pavers in the main part of the sidewalk, and then in what's called the amenity zone, which is closer to the curb, that's where your street trees are, your street lights, where you might have trash litter receptacles or maybe business signage, the sandwich boards that are out there. That would be kind of like a higher end finish, maybe like stone pavers. And some of this is coming from the talking with the infrastructure committee and the idea that pulling elements similar that was done in the main downtown area that exists today. So pulling similar materials up through Main Street. So it feels, continuous, and it doesn't feel like kind of like a separate project. So you really have that kind of continuity in downtown as you move through the lower section by the circulator and then head up Main Street heading north. So again, the storefront block is kind of more the high end where the sidewalks are all brick pavers, and then the shoulder areas, the amenity zone, are the stone pavers. Then the graphic that you see on the right-hand side, that would be kind of more of a typical section of Main Street, kind of north and south of the storefront zone. And so that would be traditional concrete sidewalks. And then in the amenity zone on the shoulders where the trees and lights are, that would be brick pavers shown there. So those are kind of the two major differences between these two images. This slide is talking about basically recapturing what we had discussed about potential street lighting for the downtown. So the image that's on the left is what you currently have down in the newer section of downtown where the circulator is. So that is a Kim era fixture. It's kind of has like a conical shape to it, sort of a modern aesthetic. And the conversation with the infrastructure committee was basically let's find a fixture that isn't like that one, but could kind of bridge the gap and feel kind of, it would be different, but yet it wouldn't be so different that it wouldn't kind of fit. And so we had presented a variety of options for different styles of light fixtures for the downtown, and fixture D as in dog that you see highlighted in red is the one that was sort of unanimously chosen to move forward with, to look at those options for that style of a post top fixture with that kind of shade on the top.
Mike, and can you, can you kind of expand? So my understanding is that, depending on the style of lights that we end up going with, fairly soon you would be looking to basically call vendors and get a few into the city so that folks could kind of take a look at them and provide some feedback on those too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So now that we had received the guidance on the style of fixture that was kind of, that's the way we want to go. So now our next step is that we will look for light fixtures in that general aesthetic style that can meet the requirements for this project to provide proper illumination for the street, provide pedestrian illumination levels at mid-block crossings. And so we would have the vendors then provide actual physical samples that could be delivered to City Hall so everybody could kind of touch and feel and take a look at them. Because it's one of those things, as John mentioned, it is an important feature in the streetscape. It kind of starts setting the standard for potential, extensions of side streets down the road. And really, you do want a quality fixture because in the lighting industry, they're not all the same. So I think getting a quality fixture, and you can see that based on the touch and feel, and then actually seeing what the warranties are on the products. So we would get, several vendors to provide physical samples that would be on display, and everybody can kind of take a look at them.
So I'm just going to jump in here. It appears one of the questions for council is, do we want to spend $500,000 to make the streetlights look the same as in downtown? And I'm going to say no. That's where I stand on that. I don't feel strongly that the surfaces and fixtures chosen for Main Street need to replicate what is happening downtown for that kind of cost increase. And I would apply that beyond the streetlights from my perspective. Other councilors jump in if you disagree, feel otherwise.
I tend to agree with you, Mayor. I think that as much as it does make sense to try to tie those two projects together, Main Street, the majority of Main Street is not going to be seen from the downtown and vice versa. And I don't know that the average person would notice lamp fixtures, street lamps, and make that connection. And if there is a way to save money here, I would definitely want to go with a cheaper option if that's on the table, trying to find something high quality for sure that's going to last a while, but not to that price tag amount.
Thanks, Amy. And Jim, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, and I would, from my perspective, I think the city should be willing to pay money for our efficiency and durability. So if these have lower operating cost, a lower operating electricity usage, a longer life before materials go to the landfill, then those are things I think are worth considering and potentially paying more for. If it's purely aesthetic matching, then I don't feel as strongly about it.
Thanks. And Hal, I see your hand.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. I think he makes a great point about operational cost and efficiencies. And yeah, aesthetics are important, but I'd rather be more efficient and sustainable.
Thanks, Hal. And I actually have a question on that note. There are several sections in downtown with our brick pavers where they are requiring maintenance. They're like coming up from tree roots and stuff. I feel like we've had this discussion before, but should we really be using those again in this project?
The application of what was installed in the downtown area, it's what we consider a flexible paver application. So those were done over like a gravel subbase. So when that project was done, I'm not sure what led to the decisions to go with that type of system, but that's kind of the give and take. It could have been a cost issue consideration, but in that case, yes, in a soft set paver application, you're going to see movement differential settling from whether it's tree roots or around utilities or along curb lines, that type of thing. So that is what you're seeing down there. What we had proposed currently is that these pavers would be set on a concrete subslab. So we were approaching it to create a super low maintenance kind of extremely durable application for the city, knowing that maintenance was definitely on the top issue, talking to John throughout the process. And so the proposal here is that they'd be on that concrete subslab, which would eliminate any movement or heaving or any separation that you're seeing currently in the downtown.
That is good news. My follow-up question would be, do we need brick paver? We're already putting in concrete. Can we have concrete sidewalks? What is the benefit to the brick?
the benefit to the brick is just really creating that sense of place, and so it's just contributing to that kind of the pedestrian scale environment that you're creating, and just really it's a look and feel, and just really creating that just sense of place for the city of Winooski and Main Street.
Yeah, and I will add, I think that's a pretty small cost, because that's something we've been looking at too, of obviously trying to be as cost effective as possible, but that paver zone is really only between East Spring and I think Stephen Street in that storefront shop area. So it is in sort of a limited area, a limited space, but that's definitely an option if you did want to look at bid alternatives.
And the majority of the sidewalks proposed are concrete sidewalks.
Thanks, Mike. I see your hand raised.
Yes, and I think that's where we're going to get back to that, the tree cells. If we decide to put what are they, Silva tree cells?
Yes.
If we put those in, those will the root system of the tree should not upheave the concrete or the pavers or any sidewalk if we went with that cell system. They have enough room to grow in that cell system.
I don't know. Personally, I don't see the need to spend extra money for bricks in that one section and have it look different from the rest. Not like a strong opinion, though. Not sure how others feel.
Not at all. But I still, again, if go back to that cell system, even if we just put the sidewalk green on and we don't use the cell system, it's going to upheave the concrete sidewalk as well, with or without the pavers. So that's something to think. That's something to think about too.
Yeah. How did you freeze?
Oh no.
Oh.
So I actually like the pavers. I think it ties it into the lower downtown. I agree that it gives it a sense of place. It connects, and I think it's for such a low cost in terms of increased over straight up concrete. It just gives it more character.
John, do you know the cost difference offhand?
Offhand, I don't. I can, I'll look back since we do have the cost estimate now, and I can definitely break that out so you can look at the numbers between the two.
Mike, do you have a new question?
Well, I agree with Hal. I think it's more welcoming. But the other thing too is the infrastructure commission. There's commission of our peers that are working on this that, I think we have to take into consideration as well. I know our job is to save the town money, but overall, if we can save the town money by buying quality items that will have the lifespan of another item that is less, I just think we gotta take that into consideration. Attending some of the meetings I've been to, they've had some strong opinions on some of this stuff. And to go back to the tree cells, if we put those in, it's less maintenance on the trees we have to do. It's less removing of the trees we have to do. That's just an example. But to go back to the lights, the Municipal Infrastructure Commission, they wanted to make it all tie in together to make it just have a feel better vibe. And if we can accomplish that by having a quality item, I think it will show the whole downtown Main Street design will be an attraction.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're in agreement that we don't need to pay up to have the same streetlights as the downtown. Let's talk about this Silva Cell item now.
Yeah, and Mike, can you provide sort of an overview of the system and your experience? And definitely I think what would be helpful is the cost difference versus the structural soil.
Sure. So the slide that's up here, that's downtown Middlebury. So that was a project that we're working on currently. And so we're doing Silva cells in Middlebury's downtown for their new Main Street project. And so that kind of really gives you a good shot of what it looks like. And I kind of like them as milk crates. And so the idea behind this system is that it creates what's called suspended soil. So trees, historically in urban downtowns is that, there's a lot of pavement going on, and the gravel material that's below all the urban infrastructure really cannot support tree growth. And so the idea with this system is that it creates that suspended soil volume that would have good, loam, topsoil compost in there. And so that the tree roots travel in that area. And you basically create what's called shared soil volume. So trees that are spaced 30, 40 feet on center, the tree roots travel past each other. And so you get the benefit of more than one tree is taking advantage of these cells. And so the idea is that, trees also contribute to many, factors in the downtown, and that the ability to have proper soil volume means that these trees will actually have a urban tree canopy to them. And then I'm not sure who was speaking earlier, but the idea about Winooski doing that tree canopy assessment was really fascinating because we actually worked with the city of St. Albans and Vermont Urban Community Forestry project there, and St. Albans was identified as needing urban tree canopy. And so we worked with the urban forestry department, and we got a grant that helped pay for some of these silvicels in St. Albans downtown. And so the benefit of these larger tree canopies is that they provide like stormwater intercept. When it's been raining out, or if you're on a golf course and it starts raining, the first thing you do is you go under a tree, and that's because these trees intercept rainfall from the leaves and the bark and the branches. And so that long term, the benefit of large canopy trees in your urban downtown is it's less of a burden in that zone on your stormwater infrastructure because of the ability for them to absorb that initial rain event that's happening kind of in the canopy footprint, so that water's not making it down to the ground and then surcharging your stormwater infrastructure. So you've got the intercept, and then you've got the whole roots, the tree roots, and the soil hydrology that's being benefited. And then just in general, healthy trees in the urban downtown also means business, and that several studies have shown that the presence of street trees positively influence shoppers' perceptions. And so a famous quote is trees make cities livable. And so the idea here is that you really create that kind of urban tree canopy and have it be successful. The average urban street tree is going to live to be 5 to 7 years planted in a traditional manner, where you just kind of what's called potholing it, where you just dig that 4 foot by 6 foot hole in the ground, and then you put the tree in. So it's just, there's so many stressors with urban trees that they just don't have the proper soil volume to sustain life. And so it's a constant tree turnover in urban environments where you're replacing them several years, and it just happens over and over again. So it's kind of an ongoing maintenance. And so the idea with these cells is that it gives you the proper soil volume. And then, as John mentioned, that these are designed to actually accommodate urban conditions. So you've got utilities coming through them. They're done in a grid pattern. They can slide and move around. And so utilities can go right through the grids, and the system comes apart. So the tops pop off, and so you can access utilities if maintenance is required down the road. So they've really thought it through on how these systems operate. So that's one approach. And then the other way is...
Can I jump in quickly?
Certainly.
You said that street trees typically last 5 to 7 years. Is this increasing that lifespan, and by how much?
This would significantly increase the lifespan. To say how much, I mean, these trees, planted properly, these trees should, live to be 40, 50, 60 years old. They should see their full life expectancy.
So to be clear, what you're saying is if we don't use this, we're going to have to replace these trees every 7 years. And if we do, we could wait 40 years.
Likely, yeah. So the other, oh, John, did you want to say something? So the other option is that Cornell University developed a soil system called CU soil, hence Cornell University. And so it's a lattice work of soil with stone and soil kind of blended together with this gelscape material. And so it allows the tree roots to travel through it. So it's kind of like the second best thing beyond the traditional manner of how street trees get planted. So those are kind of like the two different options that we were considering for the project. And after talking with the Infrastructure Commission, they were really focused on the Silvacell system and putting the best foot forward for the city to make sure that the street trees really saw their full potential. And so they had asked that we consider putting the Silvacells throughout the entire corridor for all of the trees. And so we just did a quick study about what that would take for the whole corridor. And John, so we came up with somewhere about like $500,000 increase above and beyond what we're currently showing to do the Silvacells throughout the entire corridor. Because currently the current design plans show that the Silvacells were just going to be in that storefront block area. I think it's Spring to La Fountain. And then beyond that, we were going to use the structural soil.
Yeah, and just to add, I know the Infrastructure Commission, this is one thing they did feel very strongly about, is expanding the system for the whole corridor. Just wanted to pass that along.
So is that $500,000 included in the current $17 million estimate, or is that additional?
That would be additional.
Yep.
I would be curious what the cost is for the second tier option. The Cornell University one.
That one, I believe, that one is currently included in the estimate.
I see. So that is what is currently planned.
We had a hybrid system, so we were showing Silvacells just within the storefront block zone, and then we were going with the CU soils north and south of that. And that's when
so the trees that are being built in the CU soils are going to have that 5 to 7 year lifespan.
No, not necessarily. They would. It's a much better application than just the traditional planting method. So their life expectancy would still be longer. It's a good system. It's just not as good as what the Silvacells provide, because
it would be helpful to me to know very clearly what the return on investment is of this $500,000. Like what is the real? Because it sounds like the other system is fairly adequate. So what are we really getting above and beyond for another $500,000?
Yep, we can provide that information.
Just to add on to that, I think it would be really helpful to understand the cost per tree for each of these systems. And with the current planting method, the first one that you described, that would have to be replaced every 5 to 7 years. If we could fold into that the work that we would have to do, the maintenance to plant that tree, remove it, replant the sidewalk there, like all of those hidden costs that are associated with those trees that aren't as adequate. I think that would help us kind of get a fuller picture and be able to do more of a comparison with these systems.
And to be clear, this is what the information I'm not receiving that I need. You are comparing the Silvacells to a regular standard tree planting, when in fact the decision we're making is between the Silvacells and the Cornell University one. So that is the comparison that I would like to see. And Jim, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. So I guess I want to speak. I mean, I agree with with what Mike said earlier, that kind of having some deference to the Municipal Infrastructure Commission on this is important. And they made a recommendation on streetlights, but they made a strong recommendation on this. And I think this is the only piece of infrastructure that we're going to install along Main Street that will become more valuable with every year that it's alive. So we think about every other piece of infrastructure on there, as soon as it's put down, starts depreciating, and we're going to have to replace it because it's getting lower and lower in terms of the services it provides. But these trees, for every year of solid, vigorous growth that they have, provide more and more benefits. We have lower cooling costs in the summer as climate change takes off. We have a lower heat island effect. We have increased stormwater interception and lowered impacts on our stormwater systems. So not only do we get the benefit of a longer lived tree, but we get more benefits out of each tree when those trees are vigorous and healthy. And I think you pointed out in the presentation that the Cornell soils are what's used in the downtown core. We have vastly different growth rates. On one side of Winooski Falls Way, the trees have grown quite a bit, and on the other side, they really haven't. We've had trees down there for 15 years that have not done anything much. And I think when we look at our infrastructure and the importance of trees in our master plan, like this is something that's reiterated in the plan in terms of housing quality, in terms of pedestrian and bike safety, in terms of our built environment. I think investing in this system, especially when our current estimates are $4 million below the bond level, and even further below when we incorporate all the grants that we've already realized significant savings for the taxpayers, and having trees along this corridor that are providing more benefits more quickly, and that we can sustain those benefits instead of cutting down a tree that's grown for 20, 30 years and having to cut it down because it died and replace it with something that's 2 inches wide and won't provide benefits like that for another 30 or 40 years. And we really get some bang for the buck out of putting these systems in and giving the trees a good start, especially along a difficult urban corridor. I went back and looked at our inventory of Main Street, of the current street trees that are along there, which I think are the pothole planting approaches. And 10 of the 90 trees that we surveyed along Main Street and its side streets are dead or dying. So that's over 10% of our trees currently along Main Street are pretty bad shape, and it doesn't look great. And if that's the type of streetscape and treescape that we're providing to people 10 years after this project is completed, I'm going to feel like we missed a real opportunity here. So while there is an added cost, I think the recommendation of the Municipal Infrastructure Commission is solid, and I think there's some real benefit to having a strong urban canopy along this corridor in particular, because it's something we haven't been able to realize in some of our other redevelopment efforts.
Thanks, Jim. Mike, I see your hand.
Yeah, that's what I echo what Jim said. That's the other thing I don't think we talked about, Mr. Willard, is how does the civil cell handle the frost and the winter months? I mean, do they move? Do they flex? Are they going to cause issues? Because I thought somewhere we had talked about that this would be the best option for maintenance for sidewalks, not making them upheave, or making sure that the roots do stay in and they don't cause maintenance issues for the sidewalks or the roadways for that matter.
Right. So the systems are designed, you can actually see in the photo there's a stone base layer that goes in. So that's the kind of the free draining layer. And so all moisture kind of like evacuates out the bottom of the system. And so there's no movement, so to speak, with frost. You could go to the city of St. Albans where we did it there, and they've been in for like 6 years, and they've had no movement in any of their sidewalks where these are installed.
I'm glad you said that, because St. Albans, they have a great design up there. It's so welcoming, and I have to agree with Jim on the canopy. It just eases people too. It releases stress when you have that canopy along your corridors. So, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. To be clear, I'm not advocating that we don't have trees, and I'm hearing conflicting information. So, the current proposed Cornell University situation, is that what is in our current downtown?
Yeah, correct. So in the downtown, there's the CU structural soil. So for comparison, that's probably a good example to see, you know, how some trees are doing. As Jim mentioned, there are trees that are not doing so great growth-wise, and then there are some that are, you know, they're getting by, I guess you'd say. So they do perform for certain species and I guess certain climates. But yeah, we have CU structural soil throughout the downtown. And just to clarify for tonight too, we don't need a hard decision on this. I think we're just looking for some feedback on questions we need to answer and additional information we need to give you. But I think our plan is whatever route we go, we want to incorporate that into the 90% design that comes out this winter. So there's no hard decision tonight.
Well, and I think maybe this is more feedback for the way information is presented. Something that I've struggled with on multiple projects is receiving a recommendation to spend extra money on a better option without actually seeing the information of here's why this is better. Here's when you're going to recoup that $500,000 via not having to do as much maintenance, via improved stormwater. Like, I need to see that information to understand why this is worthwhile.
Yeah, and I will say it is a little more challenging when it comes to street trees. You know, it's easier if we're talking about, say, the pool and like, you know, a liner system that you have documentation that it's like a 50-year lifespan versus another type of system that has 20-year, and you can do that cost benefit. Where I think it is a little more challenging with trees because it's not numbers. There's also, you know, as Jim was saying, there's other qualities there that, you know, as an engineer, I can't really speak to. So that's why I rely on the landscape architects to help us out there. But point taken, it sounds like we have a little bit of work to do to get some information back.
Are there any other council comments on this item? Okay, I think we can move forward.
Great. So yeah, the next few slides, I'm just going to get into, well, the rest of the design, the utility design, which is really about 65% of the project that you won't see. There's no real council decisions that we need on this, but just letting you know that that's pretty much where the bulk of our work, city staff and consultants have been, and just trying to make the most efficient routing with all these utilities and coordinate with other agencies to make sure that, you know, they're happy with the routing that they need. So figure I better throw a slide up because that's where we're doing most of the work, but nothing on the council side that we need at this point. And then getting back into the project costs again. So again, looking at overall construction estimate, 15.7 million. That does include 15% contingencies on each of those different categories. So, you know, we do have a little buffer there, and it's broken out by category, sewer, water, streets, and underground utilities, compared to the preliminary design estimate that was back in February. So that's 17.4 million. That also included 15% contingency. So apples to apples comparison there. And the 1.68 million reduction, that is primarily due to some utility routing coordination. So we were able to eliminate some additional stormwater lines that were redundant, and obviously the silver cells in this 60% design anyways. And then looking at the full project cost all in with remaining inspections and easement acquisitions, and the existing engineering debt we have, right now the total project estimate is coming in at roughly 9.1 million. So, and that would be compared to our $23 million bond vote. So that's good. We're, you know, right now we're tracking pretty far under that 23 million bond vote threshold. And then just getting into, like we've done previously, just looking at the general fund sort of financing and modeling. So, taking that streetscape utility undergrounding construction costs, the remaining costs for the construction, inspection, and acquisition, and then taking out all the general fund grants that we've received. We're looking at an approximate bond amount of 8.7 million on the general fund side. So as we've done previously, modeling what that would look like if we amortize that 8.7 million, this is our most current model. So this goes back to assuming that we're mainly relying on that maximum 50% TIF funding that's going to be flowing back into the general fund in FY25 is sort of our revenue offset for the debt. So right now, what we're showing is the existing engineering debt that we've already taken on that's being paid for out of our general fund capital funds, the general fund construction costs, which is that 8.7 million. We'd be looking to do interest only payments until we hit that TIF expiration. And then below that is the revenue offset. So, we're looking to use, again, mainly that TIF funding set aside. And of course, the other highlight is, we're not looking to do a property tax increase. We're not modeling any sort of additional property tax increase to fund this project. It's mainly going to be through that FY19 increase where we've allocated some of that revenue to the project and partially some of the local options tax revenue, which would help support those interest only payments. And then the other reference we show is the transportation impact fee revenue. It's not included in these calculations, but that's another potential offset to reduce the TIF funding. So that's going to come back to the council in October for review. So that could be something that further reduces potentially the TIF money if that's the way the council wants to move forward. So we're showing, if based on the presentation that you all received on the impact fee, the 30 grand is roughly what a 27 to 30 unit mixed use building would be that's typical of Main Street. If we allocated all that to say, all that revenue to a Main Street offset, it's about $30,000 per trip, or $30,000 for all those trips combined. So that's pretty much the wrap up for the general fund debt service. And then next steps.
Can I stop you there, please, John?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do I not see local options tax in the model anymore?
So it's combined. It's that first capital, it's the second column or the second row on the second revenue. It's capital fund designated reserve funds. So that is being funded through local options tax and the FY19 property tax increase. So it's in there. It's baked into that line.
Then it is ending in FY25. We are no longer allocating LOT to this project.
No, you can. So that's where you can kind of choose how you want to designate that. So you could continue it and reduce the amount of local options tax, or you could discontinue it. It's really up to how the council wants to move forward with it.
At that point, it's all general fund revenue, so it's
exactly the same. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all kind of coming in the same bucket.
Okay, thank you.
So finally, next steps. I won't go through all these, but the big takeaways for you, if we're sticking to the quarterly review, I think our big task for our next meeting would be to, wrap up the 90% documents for your review. And we'd be initiating the right-of-way process this month. So, our plan would be to have a pretty good head start on that process. And that's going to dictate sort of our schedule moving forward, is how well we get through the right-of-way process. So those are main tasks for the upcoming work. With that, I think that's about it. So answer any questions.
John, is the cost share on utility undergrounding, how firm is that?
So that's one of the bullet points here. We are starting to enter negotiations with them, or at least reaching out and trying to find the right folks to enter negotiations with. I have not included any of the cost sharing in the previous modeling, just to be conservative. So yeah, right now, that's going to be one of the main tasks that we can update you on for that next meeting.
Thank you. Mike, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I got a quick question. I don't know if I missed it, but looking at the utility design, how are we gonna hook into existing residential or commercial sewer and water lines? Is there a line item in there somewhere where we have some money allocated in case they are from 1960 or 1950 and they're cast and they're no good because the roots are going through them? Or is this going to be an additional cost to the property owner or resident?
Yep, so good question. So the lateral connection, that scope of work is going to be on the project cost. That's not a resident cost. So that work would be completed up to the right-of-way limit as part of the project. And the reason why that's a project cost and not a resident cost is that the last sewer ordinance update, we included a clause in there that lets the council authorize that change, because most of the city, that lateral is fully owned by the resident, and they're responsible for it, and they would have to replace it. But we have a clause in the new ordinance that basically says that if the city is undertaking a reconstruction project and we're replacing the sewer and we're going to replace the lateral, the city can take on that cost. And the good thing about that is this is all under the USDA funding. So we have grant money to basically cover that lateral replacement.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I have a question about something included in the memo. There's a statement about aligning to the Vermont Bond Bank financing application deadline, and that if we miss this application deadline, we would need to do interim financing at a commercial rate. Am I understanding that it's either that we take on the interim commercial debt, or we would have to wait another year to apply through the bond bank?
So if we miss the May application, then yes, we would have to take out a band, but it would most likely be the winter bond issuance. So it'd only be for that period between the summer work and then the next next winter issuance. I mean, alternatively, yep, go ahead.
So what this would do, if we did not do a ban, we would have to delay construction.
Potentially not. Potentially not. We have been setting aside funding in reserves for some of the Main Street projects. So we'd have to evaluate the costs that would be incurred between getting the bid number and when we would be able to go to the bond bank.
Okay.
I do also want to point out, John mentioned this in the beginning, but the next phase of right-of-way acquisition is a phase that there is a lot of uncertainty because we need legal agreements with a lot of parties. We will know that before we go to bid. So it's not that we will have bid the project and miss the deadline. We will know if we're bidding it for next year or next summer or spring of 22,
Okay.
well before we get to that point.
Okay, thanks.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and then the only thing I'd add too is USDA is still it's really a potential funding option for the general fund. So we, through the community facilities program, we do have approval to use that financing for general fund work. So pending interest rates and what their terms are, that may be a better option for us. So Angela and I will have to do some comparison, and that I think USDA is actually looking for some feedback from us during that 90% document phase. They mentioned that in the last call, so we'll probably have to look and see what interest rates are doing and maybe make that determination earlier. And I believe they're a little bit more flexible on their funding deadlines as well.
I don't see any hand raised. I will stop for public comment. If there are members of the public with questions or comments, again, please use the raise hand feature or the chat in Zoom, or press *9 on your phone if you wish to speak. Any more questions from council? Any more feedback that would be useful, John and staff?
No, this is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next item F, I would like to call a 3-minute recess. 4 minutes. We can reconvene at 8:05 p.m. Thank you. All right, it's 8:05. We can return from our break. We are at item F, charter change ballot language with Jesse.
Thank you. So as you all heard from me the week of August 18th, after you approved the ballot language for the charter change proposals, including all resident voting, the administrative changes, and self-governance, we learned from the Secretary of State's office that that there was a word limit on what we could put on the ballot. We had not previously been told that. So I made the decision to shorten the questions to try and meet the council's intent of putting those questions on the same ballot that would be mailed citywide, as opposed to mailing out two separate ballots, a municipal ballot and a state and federal ballot. So I've shortened that language upon approval of our city attorney, and therefore present it back to you tonight for your approval. It has been sent to the Secretary of State's office.
So I'll just say thank you for quick thinking on that, how to address that problem as it arose. I honestly feel like the way this is the shortened language is written almost makes it easier to see what the sort of the three different things are, in conjunction with having that full text in the mail. And I also think that that mailer could be an opportunity to advertise like another Q&A event or some way for people to get more information. Do you have a sense of when the timing would be for that mailer?
So ballots will be mailed out the week of September 21st. So our goal was to mail out that mailer the same week. So ideally they'd arrive within a day or two of one another. Those will go to all current registered voters in the state voter registration list in Winooski.
Okay. So we'll need to act fast if we're going to put together something to advertise there.
I have a draft. We are working on it.
Others have questions or concerns? Any questions or concerns from members of the public? All right, so I would entertain a motion to approve the charter change ballot language.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hal, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Did it, Mike? I don't know if I heard you.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item G, FEMA COVID-19 grant with Angela.
Hello. So as part of the COVID-19 pandemic, a FEMA disaster was declared so that people could seek funding for their expenses associated with response to the pandemic. We submitted 15,000 and change of expenses that we are asking for reimbursement for. About 11,000 of that has already been spent, with 4,000 in additional PPE and disinfection anticipated to be spent before the end of December. This is a 75% reimbursement grant. However, the state of Vermont is reimbursing cities for the 25% match.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns from council? Any public comment? I would entertain a motion to approve the FEMA COVID-19 grant.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item H, local government expense reimbursement grant.
So the local government expense reimbursement grant, or the ELGR grant, is a partner to the FEMA grant. This is a state level grant that is from the CARES funding. It is funding more broadly items associated with the pandemic that FEMA is not specifically covering. In our case, we are applying for hazard pay reimbursement of staff that was reassigned to specific COVID duties, in this case, our communications person, and thermometers, which are oddly not covered by FEMA. This is a $52,000 grant that we are applying for, and it is partnered with the FEMA grant. So if anything from the FEMA grant is rejected by FEMA, it will automatically be submitted to Elger for coverage.
Any questions or concerns on this grant? Questions from the public? Would entertain a motion to approve the local government expense reimbursement grant.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Christine, before you move on, I just want to acknowledge that these two grant applications are really cumbersome grant applications. And we, some of the dollar figures are not huge, but in that vein of trying to be on top of our finances, given the uncertainty going into next year, we made the decision to have Angela spend a lot of time pulling together these grant applications, as well as other staff on their projections. So just wanted to acknowledge all of the work she has done in addition to year-end and audit prep and budget prep and whatnot. Thank you very much, Angela.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. It is not surprising to me that a FEMA-related grant would be complex. Our next item is Vermont Department of Children and Families Operational Relief Grant for childcare, summer day camps, and after-school programs with Ray.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, you definitely get your money's worth with that grant title. It is a mouthful, but Kate Anderson is also here. I don't know if she's got her video on, but our Thrive director as well, who did much. Oh, there she is. So yeah, we're, again, sort of in Jesse's vein, they're excited to continue to keep an eye on resources available through the state. This grant was put out as a way to sort of retroactively help programs recoup costs that may have been lost due to programmatic changes from COVID. So Kate and Angela, all the credit due there. They work together to put this together, do the modeling. As you can see from the request, it equates to a little over $33,000 in lost potential revenue based on reduced enrollment and higher staff-student ratios. So happy to be putting this forward and, again, continuing to keep an eye on available resources at the state level and beyond to keep Thrive afloat during these times. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and certainly Kate is here to help answer questions as well.
Any questions from council? Thanks for your work on this, and I imagine a lot of pivoting operationally, trying to keep things going.
Yeah, Kate and her team deserve huge amounts of accolade and kudos. They've done a fabulous job, and they have made my job quite easy, frankly. And I think for families who are sending their kids to program, just the positive feedback we're hearing and sort of comfort and confidence despite everything going on is really heartening. So I've been super impressed by the team, and they've done a really good job.
Jim, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm going to have to speak up on that. Sorry. I just want to pile on there as a parent who took advantage of Summer Thrive and has signed up for this fall, and the level of being on it that you all have achieved through all this is pretty impressive. To be able to come back from furlough with a program and to not only do a program during this hard time while the school's under construction, while your space is not available. And it was one of my kids' favorite summer camps that they did this summer. And that's, I think, a testament to how much you're not only getting through this, but also making a really positive set of changes in the program. So I just want to thank you personally in this space for what you've done. And I said it over email, but it means a lot to us as parents of two working parents with kids. So thank you for what you're doing.
If I can just pile on too, Kate is an absolute rock star. Not only all of the things that Ray and Jim just said, but she started Thrive with her team as we were still in the outbreak, and still managed to convey safety and comfort and joy in for the children, and it was just amazing. And we are so fortunate to have you, Kate, and the council will consider really innovative thing Kate has come up with as well in their next agenda item.
Do I have a motion to approve the Vermont Department of Children and Families Operational Relief Grant, et cetera?
Second.
I didn't hear the first. Who made the motion?
I'll move.
Okay, motion by Jim, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. So moving on to item J, Vermont Child Care Hubs Initiative and Thrive.
So I'll do a quick table set here, and then I'm going to put Kate on the spot to talk a little bit more. Full disclosure, we were having a pretty intense planning conversation at about 11:30 this morning. So I think fair to say that this is still a work in progress and something we are working to develop here, as we speak. But excited to be thinking about, in addition to our after school offering, putting together some full day options for families through the fall at least. So I'm going to let Kate talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks for all of the kind words from everyone. But we had actually discussed before the governor tweeted out about it, but we had discussed possibly offering some full day care options for families on their kids' remote learning days. And they're now providing some money, some federal money towards that for programs to offer a space for kids to be in grades K through 5 when they're not physically in school but still learning. So we are hoping, they're sort of doing a fluid grant process where our profile's been elevated to the state by Vermont After School. And at some point this week, someone from the state will reach out to us and figure out licensing the space in the community room at the new pool. So we could accommodate 8 to 12 kids, a total of 24 on the 2 different days. And we wouldn't be providing, a full week of care for kids, but it would be 1 extra day for families to have their children somewhere safe, either a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday for families. So because we do have some of our current Thrive staff who aren't occupied during the day, they would be able to, pretty quickly start providing some of that full day care. And I think we're in a better position than some programs would be to get that up and running as quickly as the end of the month. So we're sort of waiting to work a little bit with the state to confirm exactly how much money we're able to receive from them, but they are willing to cover the entire first month's costs if we're approved. So that would be all of our staffing and then all of the setup costs for furniture and, sort of getting everything up and going in that space. So if we're able to take advantage of that, that would be great. And, we would be able to be solvent based on some of the models we've looked at going forward, even after that first month of sort of runway runs out.
And just to add, I was going to say, just to add from an obligation perspective for the funding, we would be expected to run then programs through December. So that would be sort of the time frame that the grant would be after that first month of funding, expecting us to sort of pick up the pieces between then and December minimally, and then potentially longer depending on what the school looks like from a hybrid learning perspective.
And just to be clear for the council, we're not asking for approval on this tonight, but given that we are very aggressively pursuing being a hub, we wanted to and we're starting to advertise this as an option, we wanted to let you know we were doing it. As we move forward, we will come back and ask for that approval for that application.
I'm curious so this could support up to 24 kids. What is the regular Thrive attendance?
Go ahead, Kate.
Pre-COVID, we had like 46 distinct kids in Thrive after school. And that was, some of them might have only come 1 day a week. But that was sort of our pre-COVID number. And then in after school, we should be able to accommodate, in the teens this year per day. Since kids are only coming on their in-person days.
Is after school, like regular Thrive, happening in the pool community room as well?
No, that's happening on site at the school like usual.
Okay.
But the reason the full day care would be at the pool community room is because the school doesn't want, to mix their groups basically.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I mean, there's not really a great comparison because we've not run a full day school year program per se, but our vacation camps in the past have typically been between 14 and 18 kids for February and April breaks, per day. And then with summer camp, that's really ebbed and flowed quite a bit, but we, in most recent years, have seen kind of upwards of 30 for a day. So this is definitely a smaller program and a higher, student to staff ratio, lower student to staff ratio for, for health and safety reasons. So definitely not as financially efficient to run, but I think, certainly worth it. And again, I think this funding, if we're able to secure it, will help us stay solvent through the fall, which is great for this particular program. Thrive writ large is in fine shape for the moment, but we want to make sure we're not running a deficit program that we're adding to the mix.
Well, definitely appreciate you all jumping on this evolving program from the state to bring that to Winooski. Jim, I see your hand.
Just a quick question, and I'm sorry if I missed this in the agenda materials, but the state would cover all operating costs for a month, and then through December, you're obligated to run it. Would you start charging a fee or doing a fee plus scholarship option or?
Yep. So our plan is to run it as we've run all the other Thrive programs with a fee right out of the gate. So even with that first month, there would be a fee expectation from families, and that would also kind of help us build up that runway a bit financially. We are trying, we will be, because we're going to run this through the Thrive mantle, we will be eligible for subsidy families to leverage those resources to be there, which is great. So that does allow for expanded accessibility. And then we're still working out, the fee-based piece for what a day would look like. Because again, we don't have kind of an apple to apple to say full day care during the school year costs X. So that is a piece that we're working on modeling out, but very much with an eye to affordability.
And can I ask, as a follow-up, just in thinking about, and like you said, you've been talking about this morning, so I recognize it's I'm asking probably too detailed questions, but I'm just curious about how we'll get this resource out to people like families that really need it, but won't necessarily find out about it through the listserv, through the news blast, through the Thrive emails. I think there are a lot of parents who might potentially take advantage of this who may also have other options. And how do we get this program filled first through the families who are in most need for this care so that their kids can be safe and cared for during the day?
That's a great question. And Kate, I don't know if you want to field that. I'm happy to. You can, maybe I'll stab it and then you can kick me if I'm off. But
yeah,
I think
we have been in communication with the school guidance counselors at the elementary level, so they can definitely funnel people our way, and they have for after school in the past and summer. And then I think also as a licensed program, childcare resource, which is how families access subsidy, can has a list of licensed care. So if they're updated and kept abreast of the situation, they can send families our way who maybe haven't participated in Thrive in the past, but are finding them through subsidy or working with a social worker or other means.
I would say too, we've had with existing programs so far great success working with our school liaisons and with AALV. So those have also been great partners in bringing some brand new families into the mix, which has been really exciting. So I think these are not families we were necessarily serving before COVID. So that feels like a real win as well.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from council? All right. Well, thanks again. We'll hear more soon, I think.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Item K, VTrans Bicycle and Pedestrian 2020 Grant Application Scoping Study, New Sidewalks.
Great, thanks. Yes, so this is an application for the annual VTrans Bike Ped grant in the amount of $60,000, there, if awarded, there would be a 20% local match for the city. The purpose of the grant is to perform a scoping study for the streets that were identified in the transportation master plan as recommended for extending sidewalk. So these are streets where there currently are no sidewalks on either side of the street. So this is East Spring from East Allen to Russell, North Street from Pine to Cedar Street, Hood Street from East Allen to LaFountain, and you heard tonight, Manso Street from East Allen to LaFountain. So the scope would be to perform a topographic and boundary survey to confirm the right-of-way widths to see how we could actually install a sidewalk in some of these narrow right-of-ways, and to perform some neighborhood outreach to confirm that, yes, you know, the neighbors are in agreement that they see a benefit of the sidewalk, especially if we do have to do any temporary, you know, construction easements to install it. And then prepare a preliminary cost estimate so that we can look at potential funding options in the future for the construction phase.
Questions from council? Jim?
Sorry. The right-of-ways are narrow. Is this study going to potentially include the identification of green space or planting opportunities? Could it?
In a way. So I think what we'd be looking at is if we can lay out the sidewalk, you know, say close enough to the right-of-way or to the right-of-way limit and create a street tree belt, you know, that would be part of the public outreach as far as where we can, you know, put potentially a tree belt on the corridor. So yeah, I think yes, it would help clarify if, you know, we can get ideally a 5-foot tree belt in and get a sidewalk as well.
Any other questions? So I would take a motion to approve the VTrans Bicycle and Pedestrian 2020 grant application.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item I, Housing Stability Indicators Update Discussion, which Jesse will lead in lieu of Heather.
Yes, this is always a very scary prospect trying to speak on behalf of Heather. So apologies in advance. So as I mentioned earlier, Heather is on a very well-deserved vacation this week. At your July 6th council meeting, you had a conversation about supporting residents through their own financial insecurities for housing stability, and asked for folks to asked us to apply for funding or find resources to do more detailed data analysis. So as we do that, Heather really scoured resources for existing data sources to inform our actions here in Winooski. So what you have here is the report she has generated of those existing data sources and the financial impacts of our residents. This was presented to the Housing Commission and they had a conversation about it. I believe Jim was there. And because of that, we also, and following up from your July 6th meeting, wanted to bring it to you as well. If you have detailed questions about the data sources, I will happily collect those, but may have Heather respond when she is back.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jesse. I just want to highlight that there's some good news in here in that we know that our residents are more cost burdened than average, but they're also taking advantage of the housing stability programs provided by the state at a higher rate than other areas. And I have heard, I've heard several times from folks at the state that are part of those programs that there is still money available there. So there's still help available for folks who are unable to pay rent or mortgage. Any questions or comments from council?
I would just like to pass on kudos to Heather for putting this together. I thought it was really informative. One thing I'm thinking about when it comes to the unemployment rate and the fact that it went down is really seasonal work. And so I just want to, caution us to keep that in mind and keep checking in on that rate as we start approaching winter, because I think that this is when it's going to get really tough for our community again, when the seasonal jobs are gone.
All right, so thank you for sharing, and to Heather for continuing to collect this data. We will move on to item M for discussion, the 2020 policy priorities and strategies update.
So this, you adopted at that July meeting, this 2020 recovery plan. We aspire to give you an update monthly, although we did not do that in August. So this is our first monthly report out of our progress on that plan. Because we are doing this in a shortened version, and because so many of these things are core municipal government that that you would like us to report on, about taking care of our community, we want to present all of the goals at once monthly, not goal by goal. But it is very abbreviated in our updates, so we're not totally overwhelming you or duplicating our work. So I'm not going to go through this line by line. I think overall we are making good progress. There are certainly some things that are stalling because of COVID, as you've heard earlier tonight. And then there are some things that we have not started at all yet. So full acknowledgement of that. So I'm happy to answer individual questions on this, and thank you to the leadership team members who weighed in on this document as well.
I saw in here the Hickok Street says rebid in July, work to start in September. Is that still on track?
Yep. So we have a walkthrough actually tomorrow with the contractor. So we'll be starting the end of this month.
Awesome.
Can you say that again? Is that Hickok Street paving? I'm sorry. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, the phase 2 street.
Yeah,
so that's the paving. That's the paving of Hickok Street. It's funny that was just said, because I had a resident call me today, and I'm glad because I kind of forgot about it throughout my day. I had someone just ask me about that today. So
sorry, don't get too excited.
Okay.
It's no. So yeah, we had to extend the contract in order to get, if you remember, some decent pricing for the bids. So the work that's starting this month is going to be the underground sewer work. So, which is mainly slip lining of the pipes, and that'll set up the paving for next spring. So unfortunately, the paving won't happen until next spring, and there'll be a winter shutdown.
Okay. So the sewer lines are getting worked on today. Well, because per my conversation with this resident who lives down at Hickok Street, the problem with it not being paved is the plowing wasn't done very well. Now, is there a plan for the winter snow removal down at Hickok Street? Because there are some older Winooski people that live down there, Winooski residents. Do we have a plan that could be better than that last year, or?
Yeah, so I'll review it with our team. So we did install temporary pavement to grade, and we did install temporary curbing. So it should plow like any other street. It is a little rougher right now, obviously. But that's something I can review with our snow plowing crews to see if they have any recommendations or what they're seeing down there.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Do you folks have other questions or concerns? Anything in here? Certainly appreciate seeing these updates. and where we are experiencing potentially expected delays. All right, we can move on to item N, appoint voting delegate for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns annual business meeting.
So as in all years, as a dues paying member of VLCT and passive, we participate in these meetings. We can send one voting delegate. As you all know, I am on the board for VLCT, so I have to attend, and I have served as that voting delegate in the past, but certainly if one of you is interested in doing that, you are more than welcome. This year may be a little easier than most as it is virtual. So it will be long meetings via Zoom and voting procedures, but it's a very interesting meeting, and I would happily welcome one of you to the room if you would like to do it.
Jesse, what gets voted on at this meeting?
So they vote on the policy positions of VLCT to give the organization guidance on what to advocate for to the legislature.
Do we have a copy of those?
We do. It's actually I think if you click through on the attachment, you can see it. Or I'm happy to send it to you separately. So if you go to the voting delegation form.
Yeah.
Oh, does it not let you to click?
I don't think it's hyperlinked.
Oh, nuts. Would you like me to, I can find it quickly and put it in the chat if you would like.
Please, thank you.
It looks like the references are actually linked down at the bottom of the document. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those links are.
Great work, Jim. You know, I'm vaguely interested, but I happen to have a work virtual conference that day, so I would not be able to attend.
There'll be other years.
Would any other counselor like to go, or shall we appoint Jesse to vote on our behalf?
I nominate Jesse.
Second the nomination.
All right. I'll take that as a motion to appoint Jesse Baker as the voting delegate. Do I have a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome. So I would just say, if you read down through the policy statements and there is an area in the future that you're interested in, how they do this is through a series of committees that meet throughout the year to finalize the policy priorities. So if somebody has a specific interest in transportation or administration or whatnot, please let me know. I'd be happy to refer you to sit on one of those policy committees. That's really where the debate happens between members over the course of the year.
Thank you. So this brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Jesse, thanks for the pool update today, too.
Oh, you're welcome, Mike.